Hey everyone, it's Adam from Poutine Politics. I just want to do a little bit of an intro before we get on to the episode. First of all, I want to just say thank you to everybody that has been listening so far. Still small, obviously, but baby steps as it were, when it's your first project like this. But anyways, thank you to everybody that has been listening. Thank you to everybody that has subscribed and gets our episodes as they come out. That's excellent. A lot of time does go into each episode, obviously, with some research and actually meeting to record it and doing the editing. And, it's a passion project, that's for sure. We're not exactly making millions of dollars doing it. But a couple of things that would be awesome for those people that have been listening and enjoying the content. If you're listening on iTunes, going ahead and leaving us a review there would be appreciated. Much appreciated. I know we have one review there so far, 5-star review. Thank you to that person who left that review. It wasn't me, I swear. And we've launched an offering on Patreon. So on Patreon, patreon.com/Poutine Politics, where we will be offering the uncut versions of the episodes to our patrons. As little as $1 a month subscription on the site gets you access to the uncut versions of the episodes. I know with episode 9 on the Canadians for Tax Fairness, that was about an additional 20 minutes worth of content in the uncut version. So if you're interested to hear all of the thoughts we have, because not everything does make it into the final episodes that get onto iTunes and YouTube and Spotify and all the other platforms. But if you are interested and you want to help support us as we hopefully continue to grow, like I said, patreon.com, patreon.com/Poutine Politics. As little as $1 a month is enough to get that additional content and to help support us. And thank you for anybody who does go ahead with that. Anyways, enjoy the episode, and we will talk to you soon.
Nice.
Anyways.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Promise made, promise kept. Yeah, no lost jobs either.
Oh, what?
Sorry.
Okay.
I didn't go there.
Welcome back to Poutine Politics, Canadian issues served with cheese curds. This is Adam.
This is Mike.
Mike is going to talk about
The new Ontario health curriculum and the position that the Ontario PC government has made with respect to the changes and the implementation of it. So I'll ask you, Adam, what have you had a chance to hear about it? I didn't read the thing. I'm not going to read it.
Yeah, I didn't read it either. I've read articles that basically say that it's outside of a couple of small changes, it's basically the same as the curriculum that was designed for 2015.
Yes. So I think Ford has effectively pissed off both sides of the aisle at the same time, which is amazing. Good for him.
And what's her name? Tanya Granick Allen. So she was one of the ones that ran for the leadership at the same time that Ford did, and she's like a very staunch Christian Catholic supporter and kind of not. I'm not going to say far right, because we know what far right means nowadays, but she's right wing, and she's one of the people that came out very much against the fact that basically nothing changed.
Yeah.
Basically nothing changed.
Yeah, there were some changes, but overall I'll ask you this question then. How do you think the government did if you were going to give it a grade?
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't give them much better than a D. Not that I've read the specifics of the curriculum per se, but the way in which they went about implementing this change, non-change. Because people said that, and this is just, from the, maybe this is the right-wing echo chamber on it, but a lot of people on the right saying that, parents weren't consulted on the liberal curriculum, and parents didn't like it, and this is why it needed to change, and the consultation that was done last year involved more parents. And personally, my point of view as a parent is, I don't know what the hell to teach my kids in regards to what they should learn at school. I have the basics, you need to know math, you need to learn English, you should learn some sort of technology, you should have physical education. I have the generics of what kids should learn, But don't trust me to build what that actually looks like. Trust experts to build a curriculum.
I wouldn't give them as low a grade. I actually think they did an A, because when you look at it, I look at the point of view, what did they do poorly? What did they do well? So the new curriculum is fantastic. Like, it's not perfect. And the reality is that every curriculum ever in existence should be fluid, and it shouldn't be a finalized thing. And it's unfortunate that the last curriculum update was in 1998, which is like 21 years ago. So, and it should be every 10 years, you should be revisiting it and looking at it all the time. And the reason why I give them such a good grade is simply because rather than doing what the loudest conservative voices said to do, they did the right thing and listened to the experts and did what the experts said. And even the newest one, like the updates to it compared to like the 2015, which we will get into, but like they're talking about consent. They just changed the year when they're talking about consent.
Right. And that appeared, at least what was in any news stories I read about it, that was kind of the part of it, was the fact that, say, the years in which, or the grades in which certain things were taught changed. Like, wasn't gender identity moved from grade 6 to grade 8 or something? I think it was gender identity, right?
They moved some of the dates around, which is fine.
And then I was I was talking to somebody last night though, and what they said is, the funny thing about that is they don't talk to the kids about gender identity until grade 8. However, when they're talking about different types of relationships, I think in grade 2, gender identity comes up at that time as well.
They don't. Essentially, they want people to be caring towards people that have different gender identities, but not specifically mention them,
right.
Which is fine. Like,
I guess it's
beginning of the day, it's about making sure that a kid that feels differently than what they were anatomically are, they don't feel ostracized because they want to dress differently or they want to play with different toys, and that's great. Like, that's not a bad thing.
No.
You don't have to give them a label at grade 2 to say, hey, you're trans. You can wait till grade 8 to talk to them about it, because I know for a fact that my kids in grade 2 wouldn't have a clue. They'd be like, what? Huh?
Right. And yeah, okay. So, I mean, looking at it from that perspective, obviously, I mean, I'm sure they mention gender identity in one particular focus in grade 2, but yeah, they're not at that age. They're not talking about, well, this is what gender identity is.
Yeah, they're just asking you, trying to be caring towards it, right? So it's a little bit more of an updated version of it. There's actually a Reddit document that has like 1998 versus 2015 versus 2019.
Yeah.
And talking in more specifics, but it's a read. Well, it's not bad.
like a lot of things on Reddit can be.
It's bad. I downloaded it. I read it. It's just like it doesn't summarize it the way I'd like to, where it can come across easily and efficiently. And the reason why I don't give the PC Party, getting back to the grading system, an A+ or anything like that, because like they really did follow it. They decided to repeal it and then implement essentially a better version of it. And I say better because now they talk about cyberbullying. They have cannabis in there, and they also brought up concussions, which Rowan's Law that I had to get up to speed on because I coach soccer. All great things. Like, this is why things like this need to be malleable in a situation like this. And where I really want to focus on today is talking about how the Ford government has done some things that I don't like, but this is something they did right. And I'm going to give them the prompts for it because they did the right thing. They implemented the right thing. And I love people that say, well, they flip-flopped. Technically, they didn't.
Would you say that they didn't? Would you say that they didn't because of the things that were added to it? I guess here, one thing I was going to mention while you were and thinking about it while you were talking about it is the fact that, you know, in the media, it's portrayed as the sex ed curriculum, whereas what it really is the health and physical education curriculum. Right. That curriculum just happens to have sexual education as a part of it. So possibly some of the argument about it is overblown because that term is what continuously gets used in media, is that it's the sex ed curriculum. Well, no, but that's part of the curriculum. I mean, is it the part that people had the most issue with? Yeah, probably. Because really, who has an issue with how many, jumping jacks? Jumping jacks are discriminatory. They shouldn't be a part of physical education. I mean, nobody's gonna have a problem with that. So maybe I'm being a little harsh in giving them a D, but again, part of it is the optics. The optics of it seems like they waffled or they flip-flopped. Right?
Oh, for sure. You can say that. And there's lots of people both on the right and the left that'll say they flip-flopped. And I go, well, if you voted for Doug Ford, he did say that I will repeal and replace Catherine Wynn's health plan and I don't break my promises. Well, technically, he repealed it, which he did because there was a year where we had no clue what was going on.
Yeah.
And then he replaced it. Now, to all those people that go, well, he didn't replace it with what he said. No, show me the platform that he ran on that he said he was going to replace it with something else. Show me that platform.
There was no platform.
It didn't exist. So you voted for a person that you had no idea what he was going to replace it with. He never said what he was going to replace it with.
People must have figured that it was going to be like some sort of, return to 1960s, whatever, like Puritanism or something.
Yeah, like he that was going to take a step back. Fine. If you thought that, that's fine. But he didn't have a platform. Therefore, what are you getting upset about?
I'm still waiting for that 10 cents off on a liter of gas.
Yeah, whatever.
I mentioned that to somebody online recently too, and they're like, "Well, you can't reduce the taxes yet because of the deficit." And it's like, well, I mean, he also doesn't have to cut programs. Anyway.
He's spending more.
Yes, exactly. They're spending more, so they're still in a deficit.
Don't even start.
Yeah, we won't.
Like just cut, and then say, "Oh, okay, we get it." Yeah, that's another thing. So I want to talk to because the people that we'll call them more on the left shouldn't have a problem with this. And if you're complaining and you're on the left, like, what are you complaining about? Like, he re-implemented it. Yeah, it took him a year, and they didn't implement it quite as clearly. But two things to keep in mind: they left in one provision saying that any parent has 3 weeks notice to opt out of the sex ed curriculum for certain things.
Yeah.
Well, that should appeal to anybody. Like, if you don't want your kid taught whatever sex education that you need that they're teaching, you can opt out of it. You don't have to put your kid into it.
Right. The difference in this curriculum in comparison to the 2015 curriculum for the opt-out clause is that this curriculum very specifically states that the school boards have to have an opt-out clause in effect. I think it's by the end of November. Whereas with the 2015 curriculum, there were school boards that essentially decided to opt out of the opt-out clause. They said, no, we're not going to make... They weren't forced, I guess, into having the opt-out available. Whereas the wording, as I'm seeing it for this, what we'll call the 2019 curriculum, obviously, is that the opt-outs are mandatory in the sense that the school boards must offer them, or they must have a plan for how they'll implement them by the end of November.
Yeah, and most school boards had a religious one at the very least, to respect the religion.
Right.
Okay, which most people would just take advantage of anyway. Like, if you didn't want your kid to be taught something for whatever reason, yeah, sure, I'm religious. No, don't do it for religious reasons, right? Like, now it's a 3 week and you don't have to claim religious reasons. It's just 3 weeks mandatory. It used to be 2 weeks, but now it's 3 weeks, which is good. And the other thing, and like some of the things I've been reading, it's just been incredible that the former Minister of Education said that
Lisa McLeod.
Yeah, they put through that teachers can teach whatever they need to teach at any point in time, and that they're not going to be penalized for it as a result. Which was just what? Yeah. So wait, you're going to go back to the 98 standard, but not punish them if they decide to bring up other sexual education things if it comes up?
That's okay. The same.
All right.
The same thing recently happened with the gas station stickers as well. So again, that's a different topic for another time, maybe. Right. So I understand that kind of what Ford ran on, and I guess the quote unquote platform when it came to the health and physical education curriculum was to repeal and replace. I feel like a lot of the animosity that was created over the whole situation could have also been avoided if they had said, look, we're going to leave the 2015 curriculum in place as a part of legislation or whatever, but we're going to do consultations to revamp it, improve it, as opposed to, no, we're cutting the 2015 curriculum. It doesn't exist in the program anymore, and we're going to come up with something, and then taking a year to come up with what they're going to replace it with. I feel like they shouldn't have repealed it.
He ran on repealing.
I know. I get that, but
and it doesn't bring his promises.
I know, and that probably saying that he was going to repeal it probably got him votes. Let's be honest, it got him votes.
Sure it did. For sure it did. That's why Elliott didn't get elected and Ford did. Because he ran on a repeal and replace. Elliott said, no, I'm not going to repeal it. I'm going to come up with an opt-out.
Right.
So he
so Christine Elliott's position wasn't even necessarily changing it either.
No,
okay. And his was repeal and replace, and all the religious supporters were like, with that guy, he's our guy. Get him. Give him the votes. He should be the leader. Repeal, replace. I mean, again, I don't know what you were expecting that it was going to be replaced with. Yeah, if that's what he ran on, then it's kind of the whole promises made, promises kept.
I understand, and I want to address the people that are against it, because there is a considerable number of people that are against it for a variety of reasons, right? There are some points where I can see your point of view, and some of them where I'm like, no, that doesn't work out. The math doesn't work. And it's quite interesting. One of the first things was like they say that some of the stuff is from 2015 because the curriculum's so close together that it's, you know, there wouldn't be much change. No, the same problems that you had in 2015 are going to be the same problems they have in 2019.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's in early grades that they're going to define major body parts by their proper names, right?
It's called a penis, right?
A genitalia, right? So the 98 version was the body by proper names, but then they specifically said the genitalia. I don't know why in grade 1 this is a problem. Like, what do you want them to call it? Their foo-foo? Like, if a kid has a problem, they need to address it. I don't understand why calling it by the proper name. I don't mean slang.
Yeah.
But like a little girl some people will teach their little girls to call it something else for whatever reason, and then they tell their teacher, and their teacher looking at them like they have 3 heads. What are you talking about? What's a foo-foo?
It's a greater issue in North American society when it comes to sex, and it's like it's something that is, we could go way down a rabbit hole
it's
about
taboo.
that.
It's
It
taboo.
is exactly. I mean,
fine.
sex is taboo in North America. Let's just admit it. In North American society as a whole, it's a taboo subject.
Yeah, it is. But the idea that teaching kids the names is
it has no relation to sex. That's but people see it as having a relation to sex is the problem. You know, that's why there's this issue with, well, we can't have girls learning that it's called a vagina. Why? Why can't we? That is literally like biologically what it's called.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to tell them they can't learn how to kneecap?
Yeah.
Like, there's no difference.
Right.
So it's better that they learn the proper names, because then they can use it the proper way, and then they're not using slang. Because I hate to tell you, if you don't teach them, they're going to learn. Like, they have these body parts. They're going to use whatever they hear, and they're going to use those instead.
Right.
Now, another thing that was brought up is the fact that when WIN's curriculum was created, it was in part done by, and I don't remember the person's name, a deputy minister of education who turned out to be a pedophile and got charged and convicted, I believe. I don't know if he got convicted, but he definitely got charged.
Huh.
And they're pretty sure he's going to get convicted. However, they're saying because he was a part of creating the curriculum, that the curriculum is somehow tainted. And I'm going,
oh my God.
Wait, let me get this straight. So, because one guy was a part of the process, all the other people are somehow brainwashed?
They're tainted by association.
Ignored?
Yeah.
Like, I don't, what fallacy are you trying to consider? I don't, the eye roll that I gave with regards to that, like, it's unbelievable, but they're still touting it. And in 2019, they're still touting the same thing because Ford's doing it.
Yeah.
They're saying because this guy was a deputy minister under Wynne, so somehow, are you trying to say that because he was a pedophile, somehow he's influencing the sex curriculum to include pedophilia? And how does that get missed?
You know, it's amazing to me then, based on that, and the fact that there are people still have issues with LGBT people. Okay.
Yeah.
And chances are that it existed in this situation anyways, because Kathleen Wynne is gay. But that's probably another reason why there were a lot of people that were like, this curriculum this health curriculum is unacceptable, because one of the proponents, one of the people that helped to bring it to life is a gay person, and it. So what?
Well, the one was, there was an MP that said that too about Kathleen Wynne, that she's not qualified to do it, and Wynn's like, what part of am I not qualified?
Yeah.
I have a master's in education. I was the education minister, and I'm a mother. What part am I not qualified in? You explain to me what part I'm not qualified in.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, yeah, we all know why you said it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're not backtracking. You never did.
No.
There's no point throwing names because it doesn't matter. The point is that you're not being truthful with yourself.
Yeah.
Now, I really don't care if you think gender identity is a thing or not. I don't care if you think the theories behind it. And I want to make sure we're understanding something. Scientific theorem is different than your theories. Your theory is actually a hypothesis as far as science is concerned. Scientific theories, they're things that have been proven to be correct and then reproduced and proven to be correct again.
Right.
That's what scientific theory is. So it's not something where, like the Big Bang Theory isn't a hypothesis at this point in time. There is nothing that has been more studied and more proven than the Big Bang Theory. But it's still called a theory in science. Okay. Let's go off and come back to a little bit tangent about that. So if they have a scientific theory about gender identity,
yeah,
that's because it's been proven and it's reproducible. But let's pretend that you want to ignore that. Fine. Ignore it. Don't care.
Yeah.
Guess what? The Supreme Court of Canada said gender identity is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has to respect it.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not is irrelevant. Whether you think it's something that should be allowed or not be allowed, it's the law. You need to accept it. And if you were going to ask me whether or not I think gender identity is a thing or not, I'm probably going to go, I don't think it's a thing.
Okay.
But that's my opinion, not the law.
Right.
And there's a big difference.
Actually, you know what? And that reminds me why there were school boards. I don't remember if Toronto District School Board was one of them, but there were certain school boards that essentially, with 2015, the 2015 curriculum did not adopt an opt-out clause. Is because gender identity was specified and protected, I guess, essentially within the Canadian Human Rights Act or something like that, and because it was in that law, essentially it was in Canadian law, that was why this that particular school board chose not to offer an opt-out under the 2015 curriculum, because essentially because it's like allowing somebody to opt out of the curriculum would potentially create a human rights issue.
Yeah. Like I said, the big thing is that it's now a thing in Supreme Court, and I will be one of the people first one to admit it. Do I think that, personally, and this is my personal opinion, do I think that transgender people have a psychosis diagnosis, or are they really a person thinking inside of a woman inside of a man's body? I think it's a psychosis thing, but that's my opinion, right? And I have no problems with everybody saying that you're wrong. I might be wrong. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being wrong. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh no, I don't know. Like, I'm not, this isn't an opinion where I'm like, oh, no, I'm like 53% sure it's that way. So it's not like something I couldn't come down from a mountain from. At the same point in time, I want my kids to learn what the law is. I want my kids to know that gender identity is the thing that you have to deal with, and that some kids grow up thinking that they, at the earliest age of 3 and 4, even, that they are of the opposite sex, or that they have a gender neutral thing.
Yeah.
And the worst problem is that if you look back at the 1900s, every child wore dresses.
Right.
Until like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Why did we choose blue and pink?
I read this at one point. I don't remember what the reason was.
Because department stores wanted to sell different garments to different kids.
Right. Okay. So
and
to make
originally,
more money.
It originally was pink was boys.
I do remember that. I remember that.
Yes, because it was more bright and vibrant and masculine color. So when you go down the blue aisle and the pink aisle in the stores, keep in mind that that's the department store's decision. we segregated the genders. So when you say go back in time, well, all right, let's go back 100 years and then have no genders up until the age of like 9 or 10 when you start maturing.
It's funny how that changed over time though as well, and not just in clothing but like in toys, right? Like kids toys back in say the 40s and 50s, most of them were wood and they were painted wood, and it wasn't necessarily like a, you know, like one side or the other, but you know, when we were kids you'd see like the aisle with the GI Joes and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that, and then there was the aisle with the Barbies, and the aisle with the Barbies and stuff like that was pink.
Yeah,
like everything was pink.
There's the pink aisle and there's the blue aisle. Right?
Yes.
Like, that's the way it was. And now there has been some studies on this. This is where it gets kind of murky, that say that boys have a tendency to play with more construction and trucks and things like that, and girls tend to play with more dolls and things like that. And I get it. I mean, like, it's the more maternal versus the more the hunter-gatherer aspect of it. And I get that's fine. Whatever. Like, it is what it is. However, as far as gender identity, and with the important thing to bring it back to that is, like, even though my opinion is something, I understand the law, and I will respect anybody. If somebody came up to me today and said, listen, I identify as a man, even though I was born a woman, I'm like, okay, great. Like, that's fine. That's your opinion. Like, there's lots of people out there that I disagree with them on an opinion level, but that doesn't mean I don't respect or like the person.
Right. Yep.
Adam and I don't see eye to eye. That doesn't mean I hate him.
Anybody that I argue with online, I don't hate you. I don't like your opinion.
And
but that's okay.
Some of them are really stupid.
Well,
you know.
I mean,
then talking about consent, how the idea that kids shouldn't be learning about dating until like grade 9. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I remember the whole going out thing in like grade 5 and grade 4 and grade 6. Like, it was a thing. And they had, like, I'm not saying they had any clue what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
And consent should be more. Consent should be about more than just sexual consent, anyways.
Yeah.
Like a couple of other podcasts that I listened to, kind of while all this was coming out, and they were saying that, you know, consent is something that has to start young in general, anyways. You know, like, don't grab a kid by the hair, or don't take a toy from them without asking. Don't, you know, like, knowing what is good and bad, right? And consent is a part of that. And that, I mean, yes, again, I know this curriculum is probably talking more so about sexual consent, but consent as a concept, as a learning concept, has to start early. And then there's a basis for when you get to sexual consent. It's like, okay, well, we already learned that, you know, you can't just do whatever you want, that you have to ask to be able to play with someone's toys, or to be able to, I don't know, whatever, right? So it's building on a concept that they already know.
I agree with Adam on that too. And they are talking about specifically about dating and things like that. And it's still the same thing. Like, you've seen boyfriend and girlfriends in grade 4, grade 5. And they, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, how we want to look at it, have access to more mature material at a younger age, because some people can get access to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, parents that are negligent with their children are going to be negligent about what they watch. So if I'm going to take the time to make sure my kids know the difference between why kissing is good or bad, and who you should kiss and who you shouldn't, I'm also going to be more diligent with regards to what they watch and what they don't watch. It's the parents that don't that can be problems for other children, right?
Mm-hmm. The number of times that our son will be like, well, my friends watched such and such a movie or played such and such a video game, and he's 13 now, so it's like, it's not like we sheltered him, but it's like, you know what? You probably shouldn't watch a movie like Nightmare on Elm Street when you're 6.
My kid's on social media. She's 10. She's not allowed on social media.
Yeah.
I refuse to let her.
Yeah.
Because I know how bad social media is.
Right.
Right? Like, I understand how bad the fear of missing out that can affect so many people. And it's really hard. So I'm like, let's not have her chase likes.
Right.
Like, she doesn't need to be on Instagram.
No.
Then they're talking about how, masturbation, and how they shouldn't tell kids that the act of masturbation is pleasurable, because they're afraid that, I guess, they're going to turn into people that masturbate.
They should tell the kids to eat cornflakes.
Right, exactly. Like it's somehow encouraging them. And where I disagree with, this is the one note that I would disagree with. I don't disagree with the idea that you should teach kids that wet dreams and things like that are reproductive things that you have to deal with, because you really should. And I remember getting taught in like grade 7. I'm like, well, that's a year too late. Sorry.
Yeah.
I remember.
It could be.
I remember. And I was like, you're a year too late. The reality is that, you know, and they've actually moved back from grade 6 to grade 5 in the new curriculum.
Yeah.
Which is good because they need to. The reality is that even though they bring it up and they talk about it, what they don't talk about is why physically it can be bad, which is the weird part. So if you do it too often, the dopamine levels that you pursue as a result of it can actually be detrimental to your health.
Right.
But they don't talk about that, which is why it's a good idea to promote. And that's why you want to have an open discussion about this. And this is the kind of thing where it's people like, no, we shouldn't talk about it because, you know, that's not something that gets happens. I'm like, okay.
Well,
you keep living in that fantasy world that doesn't happen.
I guess we should be happy with the fact that they don't teach that if you masturbate too much, you'll go blind.
Yeah. You'll have other health concerns. And then like in 7th grade, they talk about how they're going to introduce different kind of sexual acts like anal and oral, and how it's the whole idea that if you talk about it, somehow they're going to do it. It's like, that's not how it works. Right? I wish when I was growing up that they talked about this more, because then I could understand more about the hazards with it. And there is hazard with both of those things, right? And to ignore it is just to deny it. Well, if you're ignoring it and denying it, they're going to anyway.
Well, and exactly. I mean, some of this is more of a safety issue, which is why it's part of the health and physical education curriculum, because it's health related. I mean, obviously, I doubt that there were necessarily studies or anything like that done, but it's pretty easy to see that when kids don't get a proper education in this kind of material, they likely have a higher chance of doing something unsafe in a sexual nature, whether it's not using a condom, or whether it's, you know, whether it might be sexual assault or something like that. Like, I mean, again, maybe that's not 100% related to education, but education certainly has a part of it.
Well, we'll go with purely education, and I'll go with anal in particular. The thing is that with anal, there is a whole bunch of health risks with regards to that. And if you don't talk about them, they don't learn about them.
Yeah.
And then it can cause all kinds of issues for both parties if you don't deal with it correctly. You might say, well, you know, that's not something for me. Fine. But that doesn't mean it's not for everybody else.
Right.
And you're not looking at you. We're not judging you or anyone else. We're looking at as a populace.
Yeah.
These people need to know, because I was never taught it. So I know that there are other people that I speak to have no idea about this stuff.
Right.
And it's bad. Like, I was at least smart enough to learn myself, but I did that independently. Like, my parents didn't teach me. And I don't know if I would have gone to them either. Like, that's the other thing you have to remember too. Like, you know, if my kids wanted to come to me and have any kind of conversations, I would have no problems having those conversations. However, I doubt that they're going to. Like, I can't see my girls coming up to me and having these conversations. Like, that's not going to happen.
I feel like the people that complain about this kind of stuff and say, oh, you know, it's something that the parents should be teaching the kids. I feel like the people that raise that complaint are the parents that won't teach their kids either.
They'll teach them what they want them to know.
Right.
There are some people that will teach them properly, but I don't want to talk to the people that if you're able to teach your kids properly and you're able to do it all by yourself, great. Now they're heading that education department.
Yep.
It's fine. It's just like in math. If you want to teach your kids better how to do better in math, well, then spend some more time with them on the weekends, holidays, in the summertime, teach them better math, and they'll be better educated for it. It's the parents that either want to close mind off themselves, like, I'm going to have tunnel vision and I'm only going to teach them the stuff that I want them to learn, and think that they're not going to, like, your kid's not going to go outside of that. Sorry, that's not going to happen in every single case. There's going to be lots of cases where the kids rebel because that's what kids do.
They don't even have to rebel. I mean, they could just hang out with their friends for half an hour.
Yeah. Really.
Hey, you know what I learned today? Oh, okay. Well, hold on. We need to talk about that. Well, it's too late. They already found out from their friends because you didn't let them find out at school.
Yes.
Again, that's part of my issue with the opt-out idea. I understand, you need to give people a choice, but if you choose to have your child opted out of this part of the curriculum and you don't take on the mantle yourself to teach it to them, they are going to learn it in another way.
Very, very much so. Very, very much so. And I know why they did it. I think it's, if they did it for this reason, if they did it for politically motivated reasons to offer an opt-out in order to appease a certain population, because they did get some social conservatives on board with this, if they appeased that portion of the population and at the same point in time appeased the teacher federation, great. What a great move, because now you're looking at those potential strikes and you're like, well, wait, no. We can compromise. We can bargain. So there's potential that a strike that was looming may have been downgraded a little bit. And if they did that, that's a tip of the hat, right? So do I think like because of this there's not going to be a strike? No, let's be
real. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was
not saying that.
You might be right in that it's almost like an olive branch kind of situation.
For sure.
But
is it?
There's a long way to go to avert a strike, and I've already made the joke with my son. I'm like, summer's going to be over in a week, but don't worry, it's going to start again 6 weeks from now.
Yeah, don't worry.
I mean, that's kind of how the situation in Ontario looks right now.
Yeah. So that is, and the last thing that they're talking about is that, and I think when I found out that they're actually doing this, like, oh, this is amazing. So in grade 8, they're going to be having a, for lack of a better term, a sexual plan, essentially, for every kid. Like, you know what you want to do in certain situations, things like that. They're planning it out.
Okay.
So that way they have a plan, which is great, because if you're in a position where you have no idea, you're going to go with the flow. And if you go with the flow and you're a horny teenager, that's a recipe for disaster. Right? Like, and let's be real, that is. But if you have a plan before you go in that scenario, well, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Right? So when they go, oh, well, no, that's terrible. Like, you're creating a plan for kids. It's not just the act of sex they're planning for. They're planning for every scenario.
Again,
how do you get out of a scenario? How do you get yourself into a situation where you're in a situation you don't want to be in? How do you exit?
Yeah.
Well, you've already thought about it. So now you have an exit plan. You already have a plan, so that way it's not too bad. Or you already know where you want to stop, or what you want or not want to do, because there's a lot of people that get pressured into scenarios that they don't want to be in, which is unfortunate, but now they have a plan.
I'm assuming the plan, again, it probably partially has an overall health aspect to it as well. One of the things that, I don't know, because obviously you've read a little bit more about this than I have, but does the new health curriculum, because you mentioned concussions and cannabis use, does it talk about things like opioids? I can understand.
They talk about drug use. They don't talk about specifically opioids, because that is that's a prescription drug thing.
Yeah.
So they talk about drugs. It's not really that well updated, but cannabis, I think the fact that cannabis is included is great. They just don't specifically mention nothing about anything severely to do with drugs.
I could understand where something like that maybe wouldn't be covered until more like a grade 9, grade 10, something like that. But kind of like you were saying before about learning about something, and it's like, well, it would have been nice if I knew about that last year. It's hard to say. I mean,
I don't know when to start prescribing opioids.
No. The problem though with the opioid situation is that it's not even an issue of prescribing it to kids. It's that, again, from what I've read and as I understand it, in some of the issue, it's that these things maybe get prescribed to the parents, and the kids are taking it from the parents. Just like we had the same kind of thing when we were kids as well, right? Like,
there were liquor cabinets.
Right. We had these concerns when we were kids as well, and I feel like I don't remember enough about that part of my education to know when something like that was discussed when we were in school. But I feel like that kind of stuff, and since it is a health education curriculum, that kind of stuff probably should be talked about a little bit earlier than it was previously.
As far as I know, they do talk about a drug plan, drugs, and which are good and which are bad. Drugs.
Ask your mom or ask your dad.
They do talk about it a little bit earlier. I think it is at grade 7 that they bring it up. The whole drug situation, because they talk about Canada's just they're on the same age as well. The specifics of it, I don't know.
Okay.
But it is at least addressed. Like I said, and this is the thing about it, that I want to see fluid, where things like this could come up. Like if you had told me 5 years ago about this opioid thing, I'd be like, what are you talking about?
Right.
This isn't a thing. Like this just isn't. But now it is.
But it's a huge thing in Central Ontario in particular, right?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
And why we have to have lock and key for ours.
Right.
Right? Like it's our lock and key now, which is just bizarro world. But we've never kept our drugs lock and key. The kids don't even want to touch them. They're because of our parenting, we've
right.
But not every parent's us. So I do know that they talk about prescription drugs. Yeah, like those are essentially the big problems with that people brought up, and it's basically it's like if you have a problem with it, is it your opinion that's the problem, or is it the facts? Because the facts are the same, and this is why I like what the PC government did. They did the right thing. Right. And, you can make the argument, well, they really shouldn't have done it for a year. And I agree with you. That's why I didn't give them a higher grade.
Right. You still gave them an A. I mean, there's only one grade higher than that.
That's an A+. And the reason why I gave them such a high grade is because they did what was right. And it's so not what anyone would expect. If you had told me in 2017 or 2018 that they were going to do it, they did this, I'd be like, you're crazy. You're absolutely, there's no way they're going to listen to the expert. They did. They did what we were supposed to, and they did it the right way. Like, yeah, they made some concessions, which is fine. There's no problems with governments making concessions.
Right.
That's a good thing.
I mean, at least they are listening to... and that's they're listening to the public, right? Like, I mean, so the a little off topic, but at the same time not, because people look at some of the stuff that the Ontario government has done and said, well, they're backtracking on what their plan was. And from one perspective, backtracking looks bad. But from another perspective, it can be looked at as, well, because public opinion doesn't support what the government was going to do initially, and they're listening to public opinion as a result and changing their plans because of that. Now, should the plans change on a dime like some of the stuff seems to? Maybe not, because then it doesn't seem like there was enough thought process put into what the original change was going to be. But I guess amidst all of the, kind of backtracking as it were, they are showing that they're listening to the public. Whether or not that's going to help them in the next election is another question. Yeah,
I'm not going to hypothesize about that. It's good to see that the government followed through on what was recommended, as opposed to doing something out in left field, which was not what was recommended by the experts, right? And I remember that there was a big problem with the people that got non-disclosure agreements with the polls that the Wynne government did, and that it was a very biased poll. Like the polling was like, yeah, sure, they gave them the poll, and it was 4,000 people or whatever, but there was like, do you agree that the health education should be updated? Those kind of questions. Like, right. Well, who's going to say no? Right? Like and nobody knows what they can only kind of remember what they were, and they have to be secretive about it because they'll sign NDAs.
Right.
Whereas the online poll, it was,
well, pretty much anybody could do that online poll.
Yeah.
I think I pulled it up and I started going through it, and I was like, I'm not the person to fill this out. That's how I felt when I looked at it. It was that I didn't feel like, well, like I said earlier, I didn't feel like I'm the person that's qualified enough to be able to go through this survey, questionnaire, whatever, and provide an opinion that is important.
Yeah. So, difference of opinion on as far as what we give them the grade. I think we both would agree, though, that what is now in place is the right thing.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing.
I'd be willing to change my grade a little bit, make it a little bit higher. But again, I don't think I would go higher than a C. Because, and again, I think a lot of it has to do with the optics. The optics were not good.
I care about the results.
Well, fair enough.
I care about what's in place, not what's not.
Yeah, I know. That's fine. All right. So that is the health and physical education curriculum, not the sex ed curriculum of Ontario. This has been Poutine Politics. My name's Adam.
My name's Mike.
Talk to you soon.